Previously, we have looked at the broad overview on the science syllabus for the Basic 7 class. And we mentioned that we will learn diversity of matter, we will look at cycles, we will look at systems, we will look at force and motion, and then we will look at humans and the environment. In today's lesson, we are going to look at the overview on diversity of matter. So let's look at the overview. When we look at diversity of matter, we are looking at the aspect of matter that deals with the distinct form of materials that we can see surrounding us. So for example, when you look at air, it is one material that you cannot see with your naked eye, right? We only feel it and then we breathe it. So that is a distinct form. Let's compare that one with human beings. So you look at air and then compare it with human beings. You realize that human beings are different. We are more of a solid form, and then we look differently from air. So the various distinct forms of materials that surround us is what we will look at under diversity of matter. So under diversity of matter in the Basic 7 class, we will look at 3 basic topics. We will first look at matter in materials, we will look at living cell, and then we will also look at elements in the periodic table. Let's look at them one by one. So under matter and materials, we'll first study matter. And when we talk about matter, we'll basically look at things or materials that have mass and can occupy space. We'll look at the states of matter. We'll also look at examples of each of the states of matter. And then we'll look at the usefulness of materials around us. So the new materials that we see, the technology we see around us, how useful are they? And then under living cell, we'll define a living cell. Now, when we look at cells, basically we are looking at the smallest and simplest unit of life. So our body are made up of tiny particles called cells. We'll be able to classify organisms under their cells that they have. So we realize that some organisms have many cells and they are classified as multicellular organisms, and others have only one cell and classified as unicellular organisms. And then we'll also move on to look at the typical plant cell and the animal cell. And then when we look at elements in the periodic table, we will study the elements. Now we will look at how these elements are formed, and then we will look at the first 20 elements of the periodic table. We will study the atomic structure, we will look at the electronic configuration, and then we will also study the periodic table. So in today's lesson, we have looked at the overview on diversity of matter. And we have mentioned that under diversity of matter, we are supposed to study 3 main topics: matter and materials, living cells, and elements and the periodic table. In our next lesson, we'll be moving on and then we'll be studying matter. See you in the next lesson.